Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to understand what are rights and their need in a democracy, understand and explain the 6 fundamental right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies, understand and describe the expanding scope of rights. Democratic rights. What are rights? Rights are reasonable claims of persons recognized by the society and sanctioned by the law. An unreasonable claim which can cause harm to others cannot be a right. For a claim to become a right, it should fulfill 3 conditions. It should be reasonable, it should be recognized by the society, and it should be sanctioned by law. We can demand application of such a claim. Why do we need rights in a democracy? Rights are important for any democracy to survive. In a democracy, all citizens have the right to vote and the right to be elected to the government. Rights allow citizens to express their views, form political parties, and participate in political activities. They ensure dignity, security, and fair play to all the citizens. Rights protect the minorities against the oppression of the majority. Democracy gets a setback when a set of people wishes to take away the rights of others. Sometimes the government also fails to protect the rights of the people. This condition necessitates that some rights should be placed beyond the power of the government so that even the government cannot violate a citizen's rights. In most democracies, the basic rights of the citizen are written down in the Constitution. Rights in the Indian Constitution 1. Some rights are fundamental to our life. They have been incorporated in our Constitution as the fundamental rights. The Indian Constitution has made provision for 6 fundamental rights. Right to equality. It grants equality to all the citizens, regardless of one's caste, community, gender, social status, faith, or religion. The rule of law is the same for all, right from the Prime Minister to a poor farmer. The Government of India has provided reservations for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. Various government schemes give preference to women, poor, or physically handicapped in some kinds of job. These reservations are not against the spirit of equality. Equality means to give equal opportunity to all to be able to achieve whatever they can within their capacity. Similarly, to put an end to the practice of untouchability, the Constitution has made it a punishable offence. Right to freedom. The right to freedom grants us the freedom of speech and expression. Citizens can freely express their views and opinions even if they are against the government. But it does not allow you to instigate violence or rebel against the government. It grants freedom to form associations, hold meetings, carry out processions, rallies, and demonstrations on any issue, but these activities should not disrupt peace. It also grants freedom to move to any part of the country, reside in any part of the country, and follow a profession or vocation of choice. Rights in the Indian Constitution too. Right against exploitation. Through this fundamental right, the Constitution prohibits human trafficking. Human trafficking means selling and buying human beings to use as slaves or for other immoral purposes. The practice of bonded labor exploits a person by making him work either free of charge or for a paltry sum of his life. This is called beggar. The Constitution prohibits this practice by way of the right against exploitation. Lastly, the Constitution prohibits child labor. Any child below the age of 14 cannot be employed in a factory, mines, railways, ports, or any other hazardous industry like firecrackers and matches, printing and dyeing. Right to freedom of religion. India is a secular state. A secular state is one that does not recognize any one religion as official religion. Our Constitution gives freedom to each person to follow a religion of choice. But this freedom does not allow you to force another person to convert to or follow your religion. The Constitution also prohibits animal or human sacrifice in the name of religion. The government does not give any religion-based instructions to government-run educational institutes. Similarly, the private educational institutions too cannot impose any religion-based activity in the organization. Rights in the Indian Constitution 3. Cultural and educational rights. The culture, language, and religion of the minority should not get overshadowed by the majority. The minority group needs to preserve its roots and conserve its language and culture. That is why the Constitution specifies the cultural and educational rights of the minorities. They do have the right to establish their own educational institutions. No government-aided educational institution can deny admission on the basis of culture, religion, or language. Right to constitutional remedies. This is one right that makes all other rights effective. In case the fundamental rights of a citizen are violated by fellow citizens, private bodies, or by the government, he can always approach the High Court of his state or the Supreme Court directly to seek remedy. The courts can punish the violator and award compensation to the victim. If a person is appealing against the violation of a fundamental right, and if it is of social or public interest, it is called public interest litigation or PIL. The court can take up the matter if it finds the PIL to be of public interest. Dr. Ambedkar called the right to constitutional remedies the heart and soul of the Constitution. Expanding the scope of rights. Over the years, the scope of the rights provided by the Constitution has expanded. Some examples of expansion of scope of rights are: 1. The right to education has been included recently. School education has become a right for Indian citizens. The governments are responsible for providing free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14 years. 2. The Parliament enacted the right to information or RTI, to the citizens. This act was made under the fundamental right to freedom of thought and expression. This right allows us to seek information from government offices. 3. Recently, the Supreme Court has expanded the meaning of the right to life to include the right to food. The Constitution not only provides fundamental rights, but it also provides a number of constitutional rights. For example, the right to property is not a fundamental right, but it is a constitutional right. Right to vote in elections is an important constitutional right. Thus, the scope of existing rights has been expanding and new rights are evolving with changes in the society. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Rights are reasonable claims of persons recognized by the society and sanctioned by the law. Rights are important for any democracy to survive. In a democracy, all citizens have the right to vote and the right to be elected to the government. The Indian Constitution has made provision for 6 fundamental rights. Right to equality. It grants equality to all the citizens, regardless of one's caste, community, gender, social status, faith, or religion. Right to freedom. The right to freedom grants us the freedom of speech and expression. Right against exploitation. Through this fundamental right, the Constitution prohibits human trafficking, bonded labor, and child labor. Right to freedom of religion. Our Constitution gives freedom to each person to follow a religion of choice. Cultural and educational rights. The Constitution specifies the cultural and educational rights of the minorities. Right to constitutional remedies. If fundamental rights of a citizen are violated by any person or organization, he can approach the High Court of his state or the Supreme Court directly to seek remedy. Over the years, the scope of the rights provided by the Constitution has expanded. The right to education and the right to information, that is RTI, have been added recently. Recently, the Supreme Court expanded the meaning of the right to life to include the right to food.